Hello, my name's David, and this is a new series of podcasts. This is particularly dedicated to a cause which is very dear to my heart and to many of my friends around the world now. As I started this probably just about 10 and a half years ago, although my journey began back in 2006. So the cause I have is that we have, should I say, is Post Concussion Syndrome awareness worldwide. And it started out here in the UK, here in Yorkshire, back at a time when I think there was nothing on the internet really. There was maybe one or two forum boards in the USA that dealt with general brain injury, but there was nothing about mild traumatic brain injury, nothing about post-concussion syndrome or the kind of issues that you faced, as opposed to kind of more serious ABI, actual brain injury, or traumatic or severely traumatic brain injuries. And as we'll get into later in these podcasts, there's a very marked difference between each of those. Although what's happened down the years, due to actually Mr. Bill Clinton and his Clinton administration, is that there's been a great muddying of the waters over in the States and Canada and other places where they somehow diluted everything down to being just traumatic brain injury. But as we'll see later on, and as I will explain very clearly, these are very separate things and very different and should actually be treated differently. So anyway, the main point of this is, of course, for all of you that follow the groups on Facebook and also the blog, the WordPress blog for Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness .co.uk at wordpress.com. Which hasn't been updated in a while, I must admit, that's my fault. But the cause there is also, in addition, there are other groups, the group for teenagers and for caregivers and parents, and also the cause which we started to annually take note and take mark of the fact that the 24th of June is Post-Concussion Syndrome Awareness Day. And all of this leads us to the next chapter. And in future, there will be videos posted by me on YouTube. And as I promised a while back, but never got to do, I will be posting your videos as well. So get thinking now, all of you in the groups and anybody you know or anybody that you're in contact with, because there will be people that I don't know about and the other admins and people don't know about. Have a good think about who is posting out there on YouTube at the moment or posting on Facebook. I know there's some wonderful people out there at the moment that post their live streams and videos, like Marty in the main group and Laurie and others. And it's just fantastic to see. It's so heartening and so wonderful to see that. And I think I've been a little bit remiss. I could have done more, to join in with that. Although, kind of, as we know, life bats us around in different ways, and But I'm here now, and what we're going to do is, first of all, I'm going to give you a brief introduction into how the Post-Concussion Syndrome Awareness Worldwide cause started, what motivated it, and also just talk a little bit about the people that joined me along the way on the journey, on the pathway there, who've just been truly amazing. People like Gina Hubert, Alison Fraser, Scarlett McNeely, and Scott, and all the others. It's just, if I don't mention them all at once, no, I'm just. I think, well, each one of them, and Teresa as well, Alison, Pins and Williams, and they just, and all the other people that have helped, all the regular contributors. So, yeah, right, here we go. What started this? Well, going back to August 2006, I'd been forced to take a different job, and I think I'd been in the role for about, no more than 3 or 4 months, and it meant a long commute every day, and I did take a pay cut because I'd had some surgery, major surgery on my legs. I had at age 31. I had like varicose veins up and down my legs, and it was horrendous. So I was in a lot of pain every day, and I couldn't stand up. After 15 years of working in retail and being stood on like concrete and hard wooden floors, it just finally got to like this thrombosis state, got to my legs, and I ended up going for the operation. And following that operation, the people that I'd worked for didn't kind of treat me very well, so I ended up leaving. And then I was working in the financial sector, and this is where it takes us to. So I'd been there 2 or 3 months, and it wasn't going particularly well, although I was performing well. But people there, I don't know, I have a habit, I think, of not fitting in with people who are very straight-laced, people who are very kind of... how should I say this politely? Bullshitters. So after by August time of 2006, I was kind of like, thinking and rethinking again, what am I doing? And then one day in August, I was unfortunate enough to be just where I lived. I was going down. Where I live, the city I live in, should I say, Bradford, is full of valleys and hills and just like really, really savage hills. And I was going down this hill one night to get some groceries, got a shop, and walking down the steep hill, I missed a pothole in the pavement, or there was moss on the pavement. It was wet, it was slippy, and I just went down and bang, lashed the back of my head, occipital, right smack on the tarmac, on the pavement. I think I was out for maybe a minute or two. I don't really recall. And then as it got back up, lost my balance and then fell again and then hit my head again. So within the space of a few minutes, I not only had one, but two mild traumatic brain injuries. And as I then went into full-on survival mode, crawled back up the hill without any groceries, obviously, because I didn't even get there, and went back home, and kind of like got in the house and kind of like realised I'd ripped my jeans, I'd ripped my shirt and jumper, like blood on my arms, my elbows, and the back of my head, and I was like, oh, right, okay, I don't know what to do. Now, I was living on my own at the time, so just like, well, okay, take the bloody clothes off and get a bath and put something on the cuts and so on, and then kind of like went to bed. And at that time, I was like, well, I don't think it's serious enough or anything near bad enough to have to go to hospital. And then within a few days, the storm. What do I call it? Like a maelstrom of symptoms, the kind that you all know about, just hit me, and it was like bang. I think the first things were like anxiety and depression, raging kind of pain, and just feeling like I'd been like picked up and dropped on another planet. And so from there on, I think like another 13 months later, I had another mild traumatic brain injury, and then since I had a few more. But following that, I went back to work, and the people I work with were like, I told them what had happened, and I said, look, my doctor says I need to be careful and so on. And my doctor even wrote me a letter with a diagnosis. I was very lucky to have a GP, and he said, well, this man's got Post Concussion Syndrome. You need to take this into account with his work. Be careful. I took this into my bosses, and they just ignored it. And as a result, I was singled out, basically. Even though I was still performing at my job to a point, I was singled out for basically for expulsion. It was that kind of place. And yeah, then within, I think maybe about 3 or 4 months, I was demoted, take a pay cut, and then from doing a highly technical, detailed, skilled kind of job in the financial sector, I was taken upstairs and put in the mailroom and like making people's tea and coffee and things. So following that, they waited till I think my next birthday, the following June. Let me work several months. And on my birthday, they suspended me without reason. And, kind of after that, following that, I gave up within a month or so. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I quit. They still owed me 2.5 months' wages, which then they refused to pay. So, yeah, one thing leads to another. And as you know, it dominoes. And had to sell, lost my house, and ended up kind of in a state. Following that, kind of 2, 3 years following that, which were very difficult in some ways. And what led me to start the groups was that, well, I'd met people on the course of that journey when you kind of go down to that level in society, which I'm afraid I have to say it is a level where people, frankly, especially in England, don't give a shit about you. They don't care about you whatsoever. And you'll have to excuse my language. This is just where the way I've been brought up. I'm here in Yorkshire. This is where we speak here. Yeah, people don't give a damn about you, and unless you can offer them something financial or whatever. And the health service here doesn't care either. They just want to give you drugs. So, yeah, I got to 2009, and then I was. You tend to be drawn to other like-minded people or people in a similar situation. And I found that eventually, when I did get housed, after being homeless a couple of times, it was the winter of 2009, which was the worst winter we'd had in this country for 20 odd years. And when I got housed, I met some people who had various different problems, health-wise, chronic health problems, all sorts. And some of them became, one or two of them became friends, and people I still speak to now and still am in touch with now. I think of them as a type of family. Really, the types of people that then I'd had, probably far, far, far worse luck than me and far, far worse issues than me. But we found a sense of community because of that. And two of them in that space in 2009 ended up dying because of prescription drugs, because of things that they were given that they shouldn't have had. Two friends, I won't name the names, but the first gentleman, had just been given so much, he'd lost hope in life. And he one day jumped from the top of a multi-story car park and ended his life. And he was really ravaged by what the health system had done to him. His body was emaciated. He was just literally, and right at the end, it turned to kind of opiates and things as well, and street drugs, and he just got himself in such a mess. It was so sad. And the other friend actually died right in front of me. He used to live next door to me. And he'd come round in the evening. We'd sit and talk. We'd chat for hours. We'd watch TV. We'd watch a film, or we'd listen to music. We get on really well. And this one evening he'd come round, and It seemed very laboured, and he was complaining of like a pain in his arms and stuff and his body. And I'd made him something to eat. He had some ice cream, and he actually fell asleep on the sofa. And pretty soon I realised that he was gone. And I tried to resuscitate him, and that was that. So I think the key factor was realising that, well, yeah. And obviously the coroners and the police and the courts and everything just covered up both the deaths as like, oh, well, it's just something that happened. And there was no mention of any of the 10 or 12 different prescription drugs that were on, or the neglect that had been shown to them. It was just a simple case of, well, it's just misadventure. So that was like the final thing that tipped me into doing this. And then I looked on the internet as I got online and looked around, and there was nothing. And I'd been on Facebook since 2005. And then I started looking at Facebook. There was nothing at all on Facebook. And that's when it began. It just began as, I'll do this and I'll invite my friends on Facebook. I'll invite my family and just, kind of, because at the time I was still trying to explain it to everybody, explain it to people. And also I was trying to make sense of it myself. Having no kind of previous medical training or anything like that, or knowledge of this, I was still trying to, do what I needed to do to find out about this condition. But like within months and then the subsequent years, I found that, well, actually, there weren't that many people around. There weren't that many experts at that time that knew about post concussion syndrome or about mild traumatic brain injury. But as I put out my feelers and started proliferating the whole thing, I soon found out about different scientists, different neurologists like Michael Leddy, Michael McCrea and Leddy and others, that and the Buffalo Research Institute that had done some great groundwork and very detailed, very technical. And so I did this from my living room. And every day I would check in and kind of invite more people, and people would find it and join. And, within a year or two or three, it started to grow and grow and grow. And then, obviously, people from abroad, people from different countries came on board as well. Like Gina from New Zealand, who's been just an absolute stalwart, an absolute diamond, and Scarlett and Alison and all of the others as well. Just everybody that contributed. I think there's too many to name, really. And so going forwards from there, there were a lot of kind of trials and tribulations. There were a lot of people that tried to kind of troll us and disrupt us from various places. Some of them a little bit sinister. And then, of course, back in those days, 2009, 10, 11, 12, there was just a general aversion to, or kind of like, not ignorance, but kind of lack of knowledge about chronic illness, especially hidden disability, hidden chronic illness. And so anything you wanted to discuss could potentially be a problem. For instance, back then, cannabis was still illegal in most American states and Canada and most of the world. And so if a member came online and started posting about it, saying they'd used cannabis oil or something in medical ways, they'd be literally ripped to pieces. It was like, sometimes it could be like a witch hunt or, kind of like a public, the ducking stool. But luckily we've moved on from that, and that's improved over the last kind of 3 or 4 years. Now there's a different set of issues to contend with, which are to do with the pharmaceutical corporations and their views on how, which is still a major issue, of how they treat somebody with a mild traumatic brain injury. And unfortunately, they do not take notice of the world's leading experts. For instance, just reading today the Oxford manual, Michael McCrea's book on mild traumatic brain injury and post concussion syndrome, and Mike Leddy and others state clearly that prescription drugs, or allopathic drugs as allopathy knows them, should not be used beyond the very shortest of terms for post concussion syndrome or mild traumatic brain injury. Otherwise, they will recede progress and the repair of neurons and networks and axonal pathways in the brain. So just to repeat that, prescription drugs should not be used beyond 1 to 2 to 3 months at all. Other means of rehabilitation should be used. And so this is where nature comes in and therapy comes in and other things as well. Now, as you will see, if you go to our Facebook group, you will see the group description. Now, we don't claim to offer support, because support in the nature of support is actually a very detailed and very time-consuming effort. And we do not have the finances to do that. So we say we are not a support group, but we also list kind of the different symptoms and the things that you will find with post-concussion syndrome. But in terms of the mild traumatic brain injury and post-concussion syndrome, this is where the American confusion comes in, because they term post-concussion syndrome, prolonged post-concussion syndrome, persistent post-concussion syndrome, traumatic brain injury and severe traumatic brain injury all as one thing, as a traumatic brain injury. And therefore you lose the context completely, because as you will see if you read any detailed books on mild traumatic brain injury, during a mild traumatic brain injury, the neurons are only kind of stretched and distended through a mild brain injury, a mild concussion, or what is called a mild concussion. Whereas the more serious traumatic and severely traumatic brain injury, that's when cell death actually occurs. And so not just from the Glasgow Coma Scale, but in other senses, those two more severe categories of brain injury are very, very different. And in fact, they're treated very differently everywhere. And in truth, they are not post-concussion syndrome. They are not mild traumatic brain injury. But because of this Clinton confusion, this Bill Clinton confusion, the whole of North America believes that, well, they are the same as post-concussion syndrome from mild traumatic brain injury. So you can see the dilemmas that we face in terms of, we can't turn people away from the groups. We can't kind of say to people, well, you're not welcome here because, if you can't determine, because you don't know the difference between, category 1, 2 and 3, mild, traumatic and severe. You can't do that, because we want to have a place where everybody's welcome, everybody feels included, everybody feels able to express themselves. But still, we do get some ding-dong sometimes, and then you have to kind of like say, well, have you read our group mission statement? Have you, do you know the difference? And that's when you can kind of break down barriers. That's when you can talk to people about what they've been through. And after that, everybody's pretty much okay. But in the early days, it could be, quite tricky, to say the least. So that's it. That's a kind of the brief synopsis. I think now there's probably about 5.5, probably in the extended groups of about 5, 6, 7 groups and pages. There's probably about 6,000 people altogether. And then we have our wonderful friends in Denmark and Holland and New Zealand and Canada and everywhere else, mainly English-speaking countries and America, who've and everybody else that's followed on Facebook, everybody that's followed suit since 2009, and there's some very talented, some very wonderful people out there, truly amazing. And I see what they've done in their own countries, such as in Denmark. They've got on TV and national press and media, and they're very, very talented, very, very highly skilled people. And I think, well, fantastic. They've contributed so much to the cause, so much to like the network for awareness. And in Holland as well, I just think, well, you've surpassed anything I've done, and so it's truly a wonderful thing. So yeah, for future episodes, there will be there will be some video casts or video podcasts or whatever you want to call them, in all different areas, and I'm not going to focus on the traditional areas or the traditional problems where, or should I say the problematic traditional problems where people are just discussing what drugs to take, or because I know there's a massive culture for allopathic drug medicine in America because of the insurance system, because of private healthcare, that people feel that they are entitled, that they want to have the insurance to pay for these drugs and things. But on the other hand, a lot of these insurance companies and a lot of the schemes will not pay for natural treatments or holistic treatments or for natural medicines, which are kind of still classed by the FDA and over here by the MHRA as food supplements. And so there's this kind of deficit, there's this big gap between one and the other. So that's going to be opened up in future podcasts as well. And I'm also then going to invite other people to share their experiences. So either through interviews or through, sharing their own experience within a podcast. And anything else that you suggest as well, because we're very, very open, very, very happy to get all of your input. So if you get your thinking caps on now and have a really good think, then please let me know. Obviously, message me directly on Facebook through the group. That's David Bottomley on Facebook. You see my picture. But you'll find me in the admin list as well, or just go message through the site. And I'd be more than happy to hear from as many people as possible. Because to get messages, for the last 10 years, I've had daily messages, emails, tweets, texts, all kinds of stuff, phone calls, video calls, and it's just become a part of my life now. I've pretty much moved on, even following between 2006 and even this year. I think I've had a total of 8 concussions. But the turning point was for me was around 2011, was where I learned to heal them. I actually learned to heal the effects of a concussion within the first hours and days of it, to ensure that it never turned into anything worse. And people go, whoa, how did you do that? That's not possible. And I say, well, actually, it really is. It's a combination of different means. My own personal path, for most of my life, and particularly the last 25 years, has been working with healing, not just types like photonic healing, such as Reiki healing, sound healing, but functional medicine, anything from oleoresins and oils and aromatherapy. I've had Bowen technique therapy, acupuncture, different things. But in terms of my own healing as well, is sound's a major part, and that's going to be a massive part for the future. We'll talk about that. I'll discuss that in future podcasts, because I want to give you as much information as possible. And as I'll always say, don't just believe me on the basis of what I say. Go and check it out and look at it for yourself. But I can only tell you how I recovered and how I got my marbles back, as I say, and got my life back bit by bit. And then the rest is up to you. I think the journey is always there to teach us and to show us. If I look back now, and I did even in years before, that the injuries that I had, even the first one or two, They were actually, for me now, I see them as blessings in disguise. And that may seem hard to accept to people that have recently been injured, but yeah, if I hadn't have had that, if that hadn't happened to me, I would be living a very different life today, and possibly one where I was still very ignorant of all these issues and unaware and unable to express and to find my own healing journey. So I think there's a lot to be said after you've been through the grieving process after a head injury and post concussion syndrome. There's a lot to be said for moving on at your own speed, at your own tempo. Just as your brain heals itself through neuroplasticity, and there's neurons that get kind of like crushed and squashed out of place, start to kind of reform, you find your own way back. But unfortunately, some people are very hampered and hindered by the things that happen to them, or the things that they do following a concussion, a mild traumatic brain injury, and they don't get to recover anywhere near as quickly. And it's sad to say that society gives them all the wrong things. It just hands them all the wrong stuff, and if you don't question it, your recovery will be delayed, or will be put on ice, basically, or it will even stagnate. So there's a lot to be said for being proactive. I know it can be the hardest thing to do when you're struggling, when your livelihood is getting away from you, or you feel people around you don't understand you, or you feel that you're just totally lost. And we've all been there. We've been through the dark nights of the soul. So there will be future podcasts that are about how to survive in, well, literally not the dark arts, but how to survive with the light arts of healing and different things, and what to do and what to look at, and many different options, things that aren't mainstream. But I guess that's where the journey has brought us to. So for now, thank you for listening. I know it's hard to pay attention for long amounts of time after a concussion or with post concussion syndrome. So yeah, I just want to say that if you do get a chance, on Twitter it's at Post Concussion. On Facebook we have Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness Worldwide. And then if you look for the WordPress site, which is, I think it's something like www.postconcussionsyndromeawareness at wordpress.com, which hasn't been updated for a while, but it will be getting updated later. But there's still a lot of good information there that you can check out. And there's lists from the groups and things we can recommend, therapies, supplements, all kinds of stuff. So it's still worth checking out to see what the historical basis of what we're doing is. And we'll go from there. So I hope you're going to continue to kind of follow me in this journey, because this is new to me as well. And I'm not used to, if you ask anybody in the groups and you ask Gina and the other admins, I'm not used to sticking my head above the parapet. So please bear with me. And you will see me on video eventually. And I hope that we all get to interact as well. So thank you, and I will see you soon.